Johan, thank you for meeting with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Nice talking to you. Hope you're enjoying your time here.
I am. It's absolutely wonderful. The facilities are great. The hospitality is great. Just everything about it I've enjoyed. So why don't you tell us about you? I know you're a Q grader, you're a Q Processor Pro instructor, you're also a Q Processor Pro. You work here at Simalem, you also have your own business, Three Beans Roastery, Three Beans Coffee. Why don't you tell us all about Johan?
Well, really, there's nothing much to talk about. Well, yes, like you say, I work here at Simalem, Simalem Specialty Coffee, as a wet mill manager, and I also own my own company called Three Beans Coffee. I do mainly in my own company. It's roasting coffee. I'm like I say, I'm a Q Arabica grader and also a Q processing instructor for the CQI. The job has been good. The you know the what I do normally here, it's something that I truly enjoy. But one thing that I want to be clear about being a processor is that if you know the popular saying, if you like what you do, you don't have to work a day of your life, that doesn't apply for coffee processor.
Why not?
Because I love what I do here, but you still gotta bust your butt every day, especially during harvest season. I mean, you have experienced it a couple nights ago, and though that was one of our easy nights. So we got everything pretty much done by 11 p.m. But during peak harvest season, especially during our high harvest, we won't get done before, let's say, 1 a.m. or maybe even 2 sometimes. So it's hard work, but if it's something that you truly enjoy, it's kind of take the load off
Yeah.
a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. It's not that it's not work. It's still work.
Yeah, it's still work. Yeah.
And to tell everybody what we did that night, we hopped in a truck and drove down, what was it, an hour away? Was it an hour
Yes,
drive?
it's an hour away.
And we went to 2 different places to pick up freshly harvested cherries that you had purchased.
Yes. So I know that the way it works is different from region to region, but the way we do it here, there used to be our farmers who deliver the cherries to us. But then what we found that usually the farmers will get everything done over at their end before they start delivering here. What we end up with, like the farmers delivering cherries at around, let's say, 1 a.m. So, and when our workers started complaining to me, it's like, they were already asleep before we have to wake them up to kind of like work again. So we decided to just go ahead and pick up the cherries ourselves. Since we already have our own truck and a driver, we will go pretty much every day during harvest season, go to a few collection points. We went to 2 of them a couple nights ago, to pick up cherries however much cherries we can get. So like a couple nights ago, we got like roughly about 300 kilos from one collection point, about 200 kilos from the other collection point. But another thing that's good about that is that then our staff, or in this case, our driver and the guy who actually go to pick up cherries, can actually mark each of the bag. So we know, okay, this bag comes from this collection point from this village, which kind of like work really well with our goal here at Simalem Specialty Coffee, because each of our bag is traceable. People talks a lot about transparency, talks a lot about traceability, but in reality, this is actually how you do it. Starting from the very bottom, it's like from every collection point, mark every bag. So you can point to any bags at my warehouse. I can pull up the data. I can tell you like whose farmer that coffee is, which farmer that coffee is from, what village, and what is the harvest date. Okay, because and I'm not just saying that. I mean, you have experienced that, and you see like how our driver a couple nights ago actually marked each bag with like the initial of the village, and also when we dump it here in our fermentation tank, we dump it into 2 different fermentation tank, right? So I think that's like step 1 when you want to start talking about traceability. That is step 1. Everything starts from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's technically difficult because not only from the fermentation tank, but you have to track that lot through your entire process. So it goes from your fermentation tank to your sorting tables, from your sorting tables to the drying tables or drying patio, wherever you're taking it. And it needs to follow, that identity needs to follow that coffee the whole way through your system.
Yes, that's true. And also for what we are doing yesterday, when we are doing a few experimental lots, and one of the rules when you're doing experimental is that you want to minimize parameter as much as possible, except the ones that you're actually testing. So we were doing some inoculating experiment, and I want to make sure that the raw material that we're using is actually the same raw materials. So what we were using, all those 300 kilos are from the same village. Okay, so we know that that coffee is harvested on the same date from the same village, and the only variable that differentiate between them is like one is inoculated, the other one is control batch. So that's also, and another point back to like the one I just mentioned is like, besides traceability is also what we call direct trade, right? So that's also another point that I think a lot of people talks about, like, okay, I want to start doing direct trade. I want to start doing direct trade, but do you know like how could direct your direct trade is? For a long time, I normally do not use the word direct trade, but I say, I'm sorry, I do use the word direct trade, but it's the concept of my direct trade is actually a bit maybe different from what most people think it is. We actually go to a farmer, so it's kind of like a direct trade in the purest form. Yeah, I know a lot of roasteries. When they talk about direct trade, what they do is just they go to like maybe a certain co-op or something from an area and they call that direct trade. But we go one step further than that. We go directly to the farmer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting once you get further down into the chain. So once you start talking about a cafe and they say they're doing direct trade, are they doing direct trade with somebody like you who's doing direct trade with the farmers directly, or are they doing direct trade with some collector who's pulling in and aggregating and they don't have the kind of traceability and transparency?
Yeah, that's the biggest issue. I mean, like I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not saying that the cafe or the roasteries are lying. No, I mean, but that's like they're doing the best of their ability. So they're going to a co-op or they're going to a collector and they say, okay, I'm doing direct trade. But it all depends on the collector or maybe on someone like myself. Like they could be coming to like any processor, and that processor could be maybe not doing what we are doing right now. Like you see, like I could have just combined all those cherries that we collected a couple of nights ago, and I say this is single origin, single estate, and nobody would know. Not I'm saying that I will do that, but nobody would know, right? But that's just not a very I maybe ethical is a big word for it, but it's not something that I would do
Yeah,
because
not honest.
yeah, so I really want to when our buyers come, like our resellers from Europe, from Asia, some other countries, and when they come, they can clearly see it. We are not just like stamping that on a jute bag, say traceability is our priority, and just saying that. No, you can come here any time of the day. Not that I stage everything. It's not that stage. You can come here. I mean, you are a coffee professional. You know when something is staged or not. They can come here any time of the day. They can see this is how I set up my staff to do. Like this is our SOP. And differentiate everything. And beside quality, traceability is also our priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's difficult, traceability, direct trade. If you imagine just Joe Roastery wanting to come and do direct trade with a farmer, they have to know where the farmers are. They have to be able to find the farmers. They have to establish that relationship with the farmer and decide, okay, how much are we going to buy for? There's a lot that goes into that. And so when one of my pet peeves is when people talk about how bad it is to have middlemen. So in a certain aspect, you're a middleman in the chain, right? But you serve a purpose and you add value to the coffee as you pass it along the value chain. And that to me is one of the important aspects that often gets glazed over is how the middlemen add value. Like you have connections with farmers, you have relationships with farmers. It's like you were telling me you had another coffee professional approach you um, to buy Sumatran coffee and they needed your help because you were networked in here. You know the people, you know Sumatran coffee, you know a lot of people, especially in the Cairo area. And I think that that's something that's very interesting to me about your story. And it folds back to the whole understanding what the supply chain is and its complexities.
Yeah, yeah. It's well, talking about middlemen. I think middlemen has been getting bad rap, Um and I'm not saying that all middlemen are good, and I'm not saying that all middlemen are bad. But I think it all comes down to the individual. Like you say, I mean, like I consider myself as a middleman somehow, right? Because you been with us collecting cherries, and can you imagine like some green buyers, like say out of United States, just come to Cairo? You think they will be able to trace down all those collection points that we just went to? There's like in the middle of nowhere, you know, in a small road, and it's somebody is tucked in somebody else's house, right?
Yeah.
So you definitely need locals. Like even ourselves here, who based in Cairo, I actually have one staff whose job is primarily to just go around the villages, and it's kind of like building relationship with the villagers, building relationship with the farmers, kind of like our PR on the field. So you know, she'll go around, talk to farmers, and kind of ask them whether they will be interested in supplying to us and stuff. And when they agree upon a price, then you know we can start collecting from them. Obviously, we're also going to visit his or her farm before we make that decision. When a farmer decides like, okay, we'll supply to you, we'll pay a quick visit to his farm, you know, just to make sure that it is her farm or his farm. You know, it's not somebody else, and he or she is not like merely a collector, right? So yeah, that's kind of like it's also part of the SOP. Yeah, before we actually go pick up the cherries and we process it here. Yeah.
So tell me more about Simalem and what you do here, what your capacities are, how you process, what's your philosophy?
Okay, Simalem, the estate itself, we span across 206 hectares on the top of Merak Hills in the Cairo Regency right by Lake Toba. We are right literally on the top of Lake Toba. Uh, my boss, before I joined this company, has already started processing coffee. So they've been doing coffee processing for roughly about 10 years before I joined the company. But my boss was, you know, with limited knowledge, they have to make do with what they know. So, you know, they ended up with like a mediocre quality coffee. I mean, it's not bad, but it's nothing special. You know, it's like a very typical wash coffee. Not much complexity, not much characters in it. In 2019, my boss decided then it was time to upgrade our coffee, the Simalem coffee. And then when he asked around, he asked one of the company consultants. He say, you know, do you have any idea how we can improve the quality of our coffee? And the consultant suggested to my boss, saying that, well, you got to start from the top, sort of like quote quote the top. You got to start from processing. You already have a farm, but you do not really know how to process your coffee. And my boss pretty much just asked him, look, how I do that. And it's like, okay, you got to hire a professional. Is there such thing as a professional processor? My boss was asking. He was like, yeah, a friend of mine, he's a licensed cube processing from CQI. You can probably talk to him. And, you know, and I sort of did my interview in 2019 and started from there. And, you know, like I say, the rest is history. But when on my first day of the job, when I came here, I look around. Before I even visited the mill, I cup the coffee because I do not want to have like a biased judgment, right? I don't want to be like seeing their mill and then suddenly have this thought like, oh, this is not gonna be good, right? Because of how they do things. So I cup the coffee before I actually visited the mill. It wasn't very good. The coffee, I still remember I scored The highest one I scored is 80.75. That was like the highest lot among 3 lots that I cupped. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of room for improvement. And when I visit the site, sort of that could count as like my first day at work. I saw how they process their coffee, which was far from the quote quote industry standard of how I was taught by CQI on how to process coffee. And then I start making changes. One of the first changes I made was like how they like to they like to add in things. Like I know infusion coffee is a big thing now, but then they didn't have a good idea like why they do the infusion, but they just throw in everything. And I'm not talking about fruits. You'll be surprised what they put in the fermentation tank. They put in like papaya leaves, they put in like some vegetables and stuff. And I was wondering, and I even asked one of the staffs, like, why are you doing this? I don't know. We just, the boss say try different things, so we just throw in vegetables and stuff in the fermentation tank. And I was like, okay, stop doing that. And I started from what I would consider as my control batch. So for almost the entire season, all I did, I established 4 different protocols. The natural, I start doing naturals, starting from what I would consider as conventional naturals, where you just float the cherry, sort it, and then just dry it on the bed. And then also I did honey, also like a very standard issue honey, a fully wash, and also obviously giling basah. We're in Sumatra. For almost the entire season, I just did like control batches after control batches, just to get a better idea of like the kind of raw material I'm working with and the result that I can expect without doing any extra treatment. Okay, and the season after that, I just start adding treatments. Like I found that the Katimor, we grow Katimor here in the Karo region, without an extra in-cherry fermentation step. Most of the time, you end up with just like a very, very, very mild naturals. I mean, very, very mild acidity naturals, and mostly you will just taste the herbs, the spices, and the nuttiness in the natural. And I thought, well, I could improve this. So I did. I started implementing the in-cherry fermentation. That takes another season because then I have to know like how long should I do the in-cherry fermentation for my natural to be able to get that fruity notes that I want in my natural. So we started from like doing in-cherry fermentation for 24 hours, 48 hours, keep going 72 hours, all the way to 21 days. Okay, and it
Fermented for 21 days.
fermented for even 30 days. Okay, so you'll see like those paint buckets, those 10-liter paint buckets, they'll be like lining up. Okay, then I'll label everything. Okay, this one is fermented for 1, 2, up to 30 days, and then I'll be cupping each one of them, keep cupping each one of them, and then we decided that okay, so many days is the one that I want to be on my offering list, sort of like it'll be part of my portfolio. So that's only for one natural. And then I decided that, okay, I'm gonna do another style of natural, a slightly milder naturals, because not everybody likes very funky, fermenty naturals, right? So I kind of created another naturals that's slightly milder. I think you cup it yesterday, okay? And then I do that and also do that same thing for honey. Got to repeat the whole process, starting from what the industry would consider as yellow honey, red honey, black honey, and then I cup everything. And I decided like, okay, we're gonna do like this honey here at this mill. Why? Because I don't want to go all the way to black honey because I found that the flavor is too close to our natural. So I said I want something different, but I still want something that has this honey process character. So we decided to go with red honey here. And then I have to also do pretty much the same thing again for my wash and also for my wet hull. I have to do wet fermentation, dry fermentation, and then decide which fermentation I want to implement here at this mill. And same thing with giling basah. It was a long process. It took me about 2 harvest season to kind of get everything done and get like a fixed portfolio that I can start offering to our potential buyers.
Now that's 2 harvest seasons here, so that's within
One
12
year.
within 12 months.
Yeah, 1 year. Yeah, so yeah, it has been good. And you know, I would be cupping like our daily lots and until uh, until today. So like my staffs, they know that okay, each harvest season, like what we just harvested yesterday, when it's all dry and good to go, they will just like pull a 200 gram sample and send it to me for me to cup, just to make sure that it's the flavor profile is still within range of what we want. Yeah, and also like I will be doing like experimental lots from time to time. When I say okay, when I decide say if I get like a very good raw materials, or when I say, well, it's almost Christmas season, you know, I wanna have like a very special lot for like this Christmas sort of Christmas blend. But it's not really blend; it's a single origin, but it's kind of like our Christmas lot, right? So I would do something different. You know, like, and then just offer it, and we only have like 5 bags of it, and you know, we offer it to our local partners, say, hey, we have this limited quantity Christmas lot, would you like it, you know, things like that. And so it's it we kind of, the way I operate my mill, it's almost like almost like a cafe, I would say. You know how cafe always have this Christmas blend, and then you know have this, I don't know, like CNY blend maybe, right? Um, we pretty much doing the same thing. So okay, I want to create something special for CNY 2023, for example. Okay, I'm gonna start producing like a, you know, a special lot that tastes maybe a bit different from our regular lot. Yeah.
It's your marketing mojo.
Yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, it's marketing. Yeah, it's marketing
You
pretty
have to
much.
do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I guess I got to do it. Yeah.
So then yesterday we had a presentation for your yeast.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. I forgot to answer one of your questions about my production of volume. Oh, yeah, you were asking about like the kind of volume I'll be producing. Sorry, I totally got lost about when I was talking about the marketing thing. But we specialize in producing nanolots. So up until now, we have never exported container loads of coffee. So the most we have exported, it's about 5 tons. So that's roughly about 5 pallets of coffee. But because of our capacity, yeah, and I always have to remind myself, do not bite more than I can chew. So, well, a contract for a 10 container lot, it's very appetizing, you know, like the money and everything. But then I have to remind myself, do I want to risk the quality? Because my facility is not equipped to produce such volume. Okay, so now we can produce per season for natural. Usually we produce roughly about 3 to 4 tons of naturals, and for giling basah, for our wet hull, we can go as high as about 8 tons to 10 tons per season. Yeah. So you know everything else is like kind of fall in between. Yeah.
And how would you define a nano lot? We talked about this earlier.
Yeah, so I think when you're talking about nanolots, it will be different when you're talking nanolots to a Sumatran producers like myself versus like a Brazilian producer, right? I mean, for Brazilian producer, nanolots maybe it's like 5 container load. That's nanolots for them. But for Sumatran producers like myself, when you say nanolot, I'm thinking 5 pallets. That's my nanolot, right? Not 5 containers. So yeah, it's kind of very loose term.
Relative.
Yeah, it's a very relative term.
That's funny. So then going to the yeast, I found, so you're going to offer a yeast for fermentation inoculation.
Okay.
And just aside from, I'm fascinated by the yeast and inoculating using starter cultures for the fermentation tanks, but I'm also interested very much so in the conversations that were had during that presentation yesterday and then the lunch that followed after that, because I think that dovetails nicely into a lot of the conversations that are going on right now in the industry as a whole, like on Twitter, about how do we improve the livelihood of the smallholder farmers. So why don't you talk about the yeast, the inoculation, how it works with, the CQI and the classes that CQI has, as well as what it means for farmers here, what it could mean for farmers here, what it means for you. Kind of put all of that together if you can. That's a big picture. I think.
Yeah. Well, let me start with okay, yeah, we are very honored to be appointed as the Lal Cafe distributor for Indonesia. So thank you, Lal Cafe. Thank you, Margaret, for the trust. We'll definitely do the best we can. So back to the training that we did yesterday. So yesterday, when Michael was talking about the training, it was the product knowledge training for Lal Cafe, and I invited several smallholder farmers to attend the training. Most of the farmers that attend, they are millennial farmers, meaning that they are like the newer generation farmers, and they are generally a bit more open-minded to changes. And I talked to them about the possibility of increasing the quality, hence will increase the selling price of their coffee. And I was giving them an example of another region, Gayo region. I said, like our region here in Caro, when we are talking about volume, there's we are on the we there's no way we can match the volume of what's being produced in Gayo. Okay, and also price wise, the price for cherries here runs about 11,500 rupiah, which is about, I would say, about 80 cents US a kilo. Whereas in Gayo, they're slightly cheaper. I think they run for about 70 cents a kilo. So they have bigger volume and they have lower price cherries. Whereas here, it doesn't take a genius to figure out which one will have higher production costs and which one will end up with a more pricey product. Another thing on the top of the prices and the volume is that the yield. Gayo, from my experience working in Gayo, the average yield for from cherries to green beans roughly about 16%. Okay, whereas in Caro, we only been able to get roughly about 14% of yield. So we pay more for our cherries, we have less volume, and then we have lower yield. What does that equal to? Okay, and I was kind of like, I don't want I didn't want the training to sound kind of like a propaganda, but I was kind of like pointing out to them, say, hey, the only way if you want to quote quote survive in this business, or to compete with Gaio, is that you have to increase your quality of your product. One of the Achilles heels of Sumatran coffee is its consistency. And I say, what can you do to kind of improve in that department? I know that CQI has taught us a lot about like all the steps needed during processing to be able to create like consistent products. But sometimes, you sometimes you might just need a little bit of help. Okay, and Lao Cafe has products that would be able to help us in that sense. Okay, once you get hang of like the kind of quality and the kind of consistency you can produce, and maybe you want that a little bit of that competitive edge, you can probably apply some of the Lao Cafe yeast according to your goal of your coffee, and results have shown that by properly utilizing the Lal Cafe yeast, you can you can increase your SCA cup score, sometimes up to 4 points. Okay, and you know, and we all know in specialty coffee industry, like cup scores often associate with selling price. So the higher cup score, we all know that you will have potential of selling it high for higher price. And I say, if kind of like, maybe surviving is such a harsh word, and it's I don't think it's the correct word, but to be able to sustain in this kind of business, maybe this is something that you can consider. And one of the farmers, and you already talked to her, she kind of switched from coffee to carrots, and she was saying like, for coffee. She's kind of like downsizing her coffee farms, right? And focus more on carrots. And one of my goals through this training and through this, maybe perhaps this Lao Cafe is that I'm hoping that I can somehow kind of trigger her interest again, in like, okay, let's produce better quality coffee. Okay, because see, if we have farmers who are kind of like downsizing farms here in Cairo, imagine what's going to happen in 10 years. The supply is going to keep going down. Okay, and and some people might say, well, supply and demand thing, right? I mean, you have lower supply, then you can sell for higher price, right? But think about it. Well, if your supply is low, but the kind of coffee that you produce is like a 78-point coffee, do you think that's gonna generate a good price? No. Okay. I mean, if you really wanna, like kind of limit the supply, make sure you can generate like an 86-point coffee. So then you don't need that kind of volume to be able to generate that kind of revenue.
Corner of the market.
Yeah, but in order to do that, you need help, right? That's like one of my kind of like my quote unquote moral obligation, I could say, like as a Q processing instructor, is like to share my knowledge. But some of the knowledge I do realize that it's a bit technical, and it maybe couldn't be accepted to a lot of the current farmers, except the millennial farmers, and I have to kind of like quote unquote tone down like what I say. I have to like kind of put it in a language where they can understand. Like, okay, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. So you cannot like take everything off the book and just throw it at them. They might not accept it. Second, they don't totally understand what you're saying. So you kind of have to like translate into their local language, right? And just show them, okay, instead of doing this, why don't you just do this? This is going to improve the result of your coffee. You can probably explain like a little bit why this will improve, but the main point is like telling them to do the right things. Yeah, for them to to be able to sort of improve their coffee, right?
Yeah, it was an exciting thing for me to see because you had the next generation farmers, what you're calling millennial farmers. You had 3 of them were women farmers, and you were talking about a highly technical subject. And I think that the presentation did a very good job of tempering the level of technicality while also introducing them to concepts and ideas and vocabulary that will hopefully generate curiosity, like you were saying, to move forward into that. And I think that that's one of the things that gets the millennial farmers or the next generation farmers excited about coffee is the technical aspect of it. So start bringing in precision in the farming, precision in the processing. And I think that that's part of what's going to regenerate interest, rejuvenate interest.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Like this, I kind of sort of label them millennial farmers. The younger generation farmers, as you met them, there are 4 that attended our training. One of them is actually a CQI Q processing professional, one of the farmers, and the other young farmers, she's actually sort of Western educated, right? So these millennial farmers, these upcoming farmers, these young farmers, they kind of break the what do you call that? What did I call it this morning? You kind of break the
Break the mold?
break the mold of like, they're mostly college educated. Let's just put it that way. So they break the stereotype of being like farmers being like a lower educated job. No, they're college educated, and one of the farmers actually Western educated and speaks really good English. And like I said, the other one is a CQIQ processing professional. So imagine in a few years, if we have more and more this young generation become farmers with the knowledge, and the social media, with all this technology, I'm seeing a huge potential. And also their mindset. I found that these younger generation farmers, they are more open-minded. They are more open to changes. I'm not saying that the older generation farmers are not open to changes, but they're youngsters. They know what's in trend, and kind of want to follow it. And well, maybe the older generation, they get so used to doing things the way they do when they were younger. Um, they might hesitate sometimes when they see something that's too it's too far from what they normally do. But these younger generation farmers, yeah, they're willing to experiment. Like, for example, using this La Cafe yeast. I mean, I would imagine like older generation farmers, when you hand them these things, like, hey, just use this, and they'll be, like, what is this thing? What do I need it? I mean, I've been doing fine this whole time, right? But these younger generation farmers, they know how cool it is. It's like, okay, they have done some cupping workshops, and they know the difference between like a very nice, beautiful, clean cup of coffee versus like a commercial grade coffee, and they will strive to be able to produce such coffee. That's why they are. I think one of the reasons why they are more willing to experiment and to try new things. Yeah.
And it's also the conversation you were having at the lunch table after the presentation about the competitive edge and the ability to differentiate your product. So during the presentation, you were talking about you asked them what are the characteristics of Sumatran coffee. It's chocolatey, it's spicy, it's earthy, and then you showed the slide that talked about the different products from the different yeast products and the influence that they have. So you can get a product that adds a floral character to your coffee, or you can get a product that adds the fruity character, or you can get a product that just increases the speed or decreases the speed, increases the speed, decreases the duration of wash time. And I thought that was pretty interesting, talking to the farmers with business language like competitive edge. And that's one of my other, I don't want to call it a pet peeve, but it's one of the things I talk an awful lot about is we need to treat the smallholder farmers as business people, and they need to treat their farm as a business and not as the family farm.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, and like I said, this, when they were seeing all this, we actually showed them right after lunch, and we showed them the difference between like two batches, one inocular with all cafe, the other one is not, and they could see themselves like, okay, that's the difference. And also back to about like the very stereotypical Sumatran coffee being earthy and chocolatey and everything. I say, well, in the presentation, I even brought it up. I say, if A, B, C, D, and E are producing the same coffee from the same region, what you're going to end up with is competition in terms of price. Okay, because you're producing essentially the same thing, right? All your coffees taste the same. So what's gonna make your coffee stand out? A buyer come, it go to A, and if A say, okay, I want to sell my coffee for $5, right? And it go to B, he cup the coffee, it tastes exactly the same, and then if B say, okay, I'm gonna sell it to you for $4.75, where do you think the buyer's gonna buy his coffee, right? I mean, it's the same coffee. Why would you pay more, right? So, again, back to like being sustainable in this kind of business is one of them is to be able to create something better. I mean, something different, not necessarily better, maybe, but something different from your neighbors, right? So when A, B, C, D, and E produce like different tasting coffee, each one of them can kind of like label their own price. Okay, you want this kind of coffee? Again, I'm gonna sell it for $5.25, for example, right? Yeah, you want that kind of coffee? It's like $5.75. Okay, and I think, and they seem to be agree with it. They say, yeah, I mean, like, we're going to kind of like murder each other if we don't do this, because like me and you offering the same tasting coffee, I'll try to find out, okay, how much is Michael selling his coffee for? Oh, $4.75. Okay, I'm gonna sell mine to you for $4.65.
Price war.
Yeah, so it's price war. So where do you think this is going to go? We're just killing each other, right? I mean, like, how low can you go? Pretty much. So if you have that competitive edge, you have that kind of weapon, right, to kind of make your coffee special, everybody's happy. right? I can sell it for higher price. You have a different kind of coffee, so we are not like directly competing, right? We just offer different things.
Yeah.
You know, you want fried noodle or you want fried rice, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about one more thing before we wrap it up. You and I have talked a couple of times during my visit about producers roasting, selling roasted coffee. And in fact, one of the farmers, she brought it up as well. She asked the question about her roasting coffee, her farm roasting coffee and selling it. You guys sell roasted coffee. What are your thoughts around this?
Okay, I believe that this plays a lot on where you are placed in a coffee supply chain. Okay, and it determines a lot by that. As a producer, your main offering is gonna be green coffee. We do sell roasted coffee, but our total volume of roasted coffees is not even close to 10% of our total sales compared to our green coffee. Because people know us as coffee producer, coffee processor, not coffee roasters. You know, and I say like back again, like I said, it depends on where you are in the coffee supply chain. Like people wouldn't go to, let's say, Blue Bottle, and then say, "Hey, I want to buy green," right? I mean, they know they're gonna get latte from there. It's the same thing here. When people come to, when a green buyer come to me, he or she is not gonna say, "Hey, I want to buy your roasted bean." No, because he's here to buy green coffee. Well, obviously, you still have some people who come and say, "Hey, you know, out of curiosity, I'll just buy a couple packs of his roasted beans, see how good he roasts," right? But it doesn't contribute significantly to your total sales. So I think unless if you really want to concentrate, or maybe if you wanna like can I say, well, set up a new company or maybe branch out in a roastery. Like I say, if I Simalem Specialty Coffee, and if my boss decides, say, okay, let's do Simalem Roasters, right? Well, maybe you can do that, but then you need a kind of like a separate entity for that, right? So people can know, oh yeah, I want to buy roasted bean, and and it's a totally different, almost a totally different business model, a totally different business strategy, because then you are dealing with, okay, I want to supply to cafe, I want to supply to restaurants and everything. Whereas in green, we're playing totally different ball game, and our marketing strategy is different. Even though they may cross paths sometimes, you know, they may be similar in some way, but all in all, it's a different ball game.
Yeah. It comes up, especially on Twitter, but it comes up in other cases as well. Like in 2017, I went to the World Coffee Producers Forum, and even the then president of Colombia was talking about, he compared the price a farmer received, he compared the profit a farmer received for cherries to the amount of the revenue that Starbucks gets for a latte, right? So he said that, you know, a farmer gets pennies for the cherries and Starbucks charges $5 for a latte. And people hear those two numbers and just compare the two numbers and say, well, the farmer's only getting pennies and Starbucks is getting $5. And, you know, if you're not in the industry, you're not seeing the difference between, it's apples and oranges. It's not a fair comparison. And, you know, your facility here is a great example. So in the cafe, you have display stands with roasted coffee in it, and you have retail customers, you have guests who are coming to the resort and staying at the resort. And they're coming in, and their target product, the product you are targeting to them is the bags of coffee. But then they're able to walk right through and come down to the fermentation tanks and see us processing coffee. And they could, if they wanted to, talk to you about purchasing some green unroasted coffee, but they're not in that market.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's not only different business models, it's different skill sets, and this is what we were talking about with the farmer yesterday who asked that question. It's, okay, you're a farmer and you know how to farm, you know how to grow and harvest coffee trees, and you might have the ability and the skill set to also process those cherries into a nice product. But then when you start talking about roasting, now you have to know about roasting as well. So that's 3 compartmentalized skill sets that you have to have. And then across all of them is the business skill set, the ability to market, distribute, that whole thing.
Yeah. And back to like the price wise, and I couldn't have agreed with you more. And I, as a producer, as a coffee professional, I often get asked that kind of questions, like, "Hey, so and so companies sell their latte for $5, $6, right? And you know they should have paid you more. You know, why are you only selling for $5 for your coffee, right?" And I say, okay, this is such a wide range of problems, and you're only seeing from one perspective. I say, think about it like this. Okay, let me walk you through. I don't know a whole lot about like the cafe business, but I can tell you, starting from the processing. Okay, let's say if I buy coffee cherries. Okay, let me just go ahead and talk in rupiah because I'm much more familiar with that. Okay, it's a currency. So let's say I buy. Right now I'm paying 11,000 per kilo, 11,000 rupiah per kilo for cherries. With the current yield, which average at around 14%, I'm looking at 85,000 as my the kind of green is gonna cost me 85,000. That's excluding labor, electricity, water, etc., etc., etc. All the miscellaneous charges, the bags and everything, right?
Cost of doing business.
Yeah, 85,000. Okay, I might be able to sell that for, let's say, 100,000. Okay, and you say, okay, it's not bad. You make 15,000 a kilo, right? I say, yeah, 15,000, but you have to think about my labor, everything. I mean, they gotta eat, and I have about almost 10 staffs, right, in my department. So you kind of spread around. You just gotta spread. That 15,000 ain't much, okay. And then let's say a roastery. A roasters buy my coffee for 100,000. He roasted, and it's no secret that roasters normally will double the price of the green. That will be like their retail or maybe their wholesale price. So if you're buying a green for, let's say, 100,000, normally a roaster would sell the roasted coffee for maybe 250 to 300,000 rupiah. Okay, just to cover up the cost. Maybe he has some installment to pay for his probat, right? And everything, and his staff, his packaging, his marketing, and everything. So if you say, and people say, oh, farmers only make pennies, you have to buy cherries for more. You have to pay the farmers more. Okay, if I buy the cherries for 20,000 rupiah, okay, if I pay the farmers for 20,000 rupiah, that will make my coffee cost roughly about 180,000 rupiah green. Okay, I gotta make something on the top of that. So I'm gonna be selling to roasters for 200,000 rupiah. Okay, a roaster who buy my green, if there's any roaster who wanna buy my green for 200,000, let's say I found like a crazy enough roaster who will be willing to pay 200,000 green. Okay, he or she will buy my coffee for 200,000, and he or she will sell his coffee for 600,000 rupiah. Okay, 600,000 would be what, $50 a kilo? Would you buy that? Would you buy $50 a kilo of roasted coffee? If you say, yeah, I'll try. How many kilos are you gonna buy? A kilo? Okay. Maybe if you buy a kilo just to give face, right? Yeah, Michael's selling. Don't worry, I'll just buy one, 'cause Michael is selling it, right? But would I buy, do you think that's going to be sustainable? Okay, if you don't think that, no, the roaster shouldn't sell for $50 then. He should only sell for, well, since he's buying for let's say $17, he should just sell for $25. Talk to the roaster, see if he or she is willing to sell for that kind of price, that kind of margin, right? So if the roaster cannot sell his or her coffee, he's gonna end up buying less. And where is that gonna trickle down to?
Yep.
It's going to go back.
We're all connected.
We all connected. So it's not as simple as, hey, pay the farmers more. Okay? And it goes back to the consumer. You as a consumer. You willing to buy $50 coffee? Okay. If not, then hey, stop right there. Right?
Yeah, end of conversation.
End of conversation. Yeah. For me, I mean, as long as I can sell my coffee, if a roaster come, if a company A comes say, hey Johan, I would pay $15 a kilo for your coffee. Oh heck yeah, I'll pay my farmers more. I mean $15, yeah, sure. I'll pay you more. But let's sign a contract, man. For like what, 10 years? You're gonna keep buying that kind of price? Yeah. Not for like one pallet, right? So it's kind of like a dilemma.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes kind of worked me up when someone like brought it up. I was like, yeah, the way I look at it is like, okay, this guy's just been watching too many, documentaries and maybe seeing too many Instagram posts about this. Yeah, every time people start talking to me like that, I say, you know what? You should maybe spend a season over at the mill.
Yes.
Get your hands dirty, and then you tell me. Yeah. Try to sell the coffee for the whole season. Try to market your coffee. Do it as if your life depends on it, as if your next meal depends on that.
And
Then
your
you talk to me
employees-
about it.
Yeah, and your employees' next meal depends on it,
Yeah.
not just yours.
Yeah. Your employees' next meal, your next meal, all depends on that. You spend a whole season there at the mill.
I think that what you're doing with the farmers is a big piece of the puzzle to fix that problem. And that the work I'm talking about is the Q Processor Pro work, the yeast work. It's not just offering the yeast product, it's the education that comes along with it, it's the conversations. That product demonstration brought a group of farmers together, and you guys, you had lunch afterwards. You spent basically the afternoon together, and you were able to all discuss ideas, kick around ideas. And to me, it felt like the beginning of the possibility of organization of farmers in the Cairo area to be able to say, okay, let's work together and let's figure out how we improve our product as a group and bring ourselves up. And I think that that's a better answer than just saying, hey, we need to give the farmers more money. It would be great if we could do that, it really would. But like you said, there are trickle-down effects.
Yeah. I mean, like I'll be happy to be able to like do more workshops like this. Not only to Karo farmers, maybe to farmers from other regions in Indonesia too. Just like you say, education. I mean, knowledge is very, very important, especially for these millennial farmers, all these young generation farmers, because I think they are hungry for knowledge. They really want to do it, and the fact that they decided to choose farming, like being a farmer, than like a 9 to 5, kind of already show that their willingness to actually learn and do things. And this group of people, sometimes I have a lot of respect for them. I mean, like those young farmers you met yesterday, they are not like a low educated group of people. They're college educated. I mean, they could easily just apply for a 9 to 5 in the city, right? But then they decide to just come back and be a farmer. Okay, so I really have a high respect for them, and I'll be happy. It'll be an honor for me to be able to share what I learned from CQI with them. Yeah, it's I realize that like taking classes sometimes would be a bit pricey for some of them. But just like a sharing session. I'm not talking about like a full-blown formal class. No, but kind of like a sharing session over a cup of coffee. It's somewhere informal. Yeah, it's. I think it'll be a very good idea, and I'm really looking forward to do more of what we did yesterday. Yeah.
I think it was very, very useful, very productive. Well, thank you very much for sitting down with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I really enjoy. Hope you enjoy your stay here for the last 3 days.
Absolutely, and thank you
Yeah.
for putting me to work.
Well, I hope you come back.
I will, absolutely. All right.
Thank you.